Hi there, and welcome to my review of Darkest Hour. So, Darkest Hour is the brand new movie from Wright, and it's a film about Winston Churchill that basically follows his first month as Prime Minister, and it's getting a lot of awards buzz. I mean, it got 8 BAFTA nominations, making it the second most nominated film at this year's BAFTAs, and including Best Picture. So yeah, there's a lot of buzz going around this film, and it's going to pick up a ton of awards, and it's going to be very, very well received, and I have to say, it's not deserving of almost any of that buzz, I think. I think it's actually a pretty meh film. I'm not a huge fan. So let's just sort of begin with the real good thing, and that is Gary Oldman plays Winston Churchill. And Gary Oldman, the infamously chameleon-like actor, is so good. I mean, he is so perfect as Churchill. He really captures sort of mannerisms and the demeanour of Churchill. I don't know whether or not the voice is accurate, but he definitely comes across as Churchill, and he's really believable, and he imbues an energy which boosts every single scene. In fact, I think everything I like about Darkest Hour can be traced back to just how fantastic Gary Oldman is. If Gary Oldman keeps on winning Best Actor awards, they'll all be totally deserved. He is fantastic here. So now to the more mixed areas. So Darkest Hour is a historical story, and it kind of follows all of the backroom deals, all that happen sort of behind the scenes politically during Dunkirk. So in a way, it's kind of a companion piece to Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. There's been a lot of Dunkirk and World War II related movies this year, actually. The first thing I have to say is it's very simple. There's no complexity to the storytelling. In fact, there's really just nothing interesting about it. The film is so conventional and so non-controversial that it's basically just not even noteworthy. I mean, this is the most standards awards film fodder I've seen in a long time. This is so awards baity, which is quite an inherently artless pursuit, because if you're making movies just to win awards, that's just as shallow as making it just for money. There seems to be no passion put into the film, aside from the notion people want to win awards. I mean, Gary Oldman himself seems to be doing it just to win an award. I mean, I assume he probably finds great depth in the role because Churchill is a fascinating figure, but it's not a film which I watched and was like, oh yeah, this is clearly made with a message or a purpose or an intent. No, it was made to win awards, let's be quite blunt about that. The film is quite standard, there's nothing controversial, the themes are all kind of muted, there's nothing really interesting it says, it's not deep, it's not fascinating, it's just very, very generic. Then you have the various other things, so it's quite a cheesy story. There's nothing about this that strikes you as, for example, Dunkirk and its formal experimentalism, and this is just a standard drama. There's nothing inherently interesting presented within the film. So yeah, it's nothing to get excited over. I certainly don't find much interesting in this sort of film. I mean, it's not my thing. Having said that, I am a massive history buff. Like, I do know my history. I've read a biography of Winston Churchill for starters, so I'm not totally unaware of the history. I'm very clued up, especially on early 20th century politics. I find that such a fascinating era. And Churchill is undoubtedly a mixed character. I mean, he did very good things during World War II, but the rest of his career is pretty much terrible. So Churchill's not a figure that I think deserves to be totally revered. I think there's a lot of faults. And I think to Darkest Hour's credit, the first hour lays out some of those faults and makes clear Churchill is a massively flawed person. I do think the film stumbles in the second half because it then just forgets about being balanced and just goes straight to just being the normal deification of Churchill that British media seems to thrive upon, and you end up with a series of cheesy and tacky scenes all about how perfect a person Churchill was, which is just unnecessary. There's a couple of sequences which are clearly just made up, you know, especially sequences involving the king. There's one sequence which is easily one of the worst scenes I've seen in a film all year, which is just so clearly fictitious and made up and terrible and tacky and cheesy that I just cringed. I was literally head in my hands cringing in the cinema. The film is just so standard and generic, it's just not even interesting. There's just boring stuff. It's not fascinating, it's kind of dull, it's stodgy, it's clearly made for awards, it doesn't reveal any insight into World War II or Churchill, it's pretty generic. The performance by Gary Oldman is superb. The supporting performances are generally pretty good too, but everything else is nothing to really praise. I mean, some of the cinematography is pretty interesting, but a lot of the editing is pretty weird. I think the production design is pretty great, but I don't feel like it's much more than any other historical movie recently. It's just very standard in a way that is ultimately detrimental. So although I have to say it's not a completely irredeemable film, I can't recommend Darkest Hour in any kind of way. It's really boring, it's really inaccurate. It just kind of lacks a lot of energy that really it should have. It's not balanced, it's sloppy, it's not got anything to say, it's clearly awards bait. So all in all, Darkest Hour is just pretty much a bad film. If you've seen Darkest Hour, I'd love to hear your opinion, so please leave me a comment. If you like this review, give it a like. And if you want to hear more of my reviews, subscribe. I post shit like this all the time. And if you want to keep up with my movie watching, you can follow me on Letterboxd or Twitter, linked in the description. So yeah, Darkest Hour. It's a pretty bad movie.